Well, we're going to start. Good afternoon to you all, and thank you for joining us today for the post-ESA Council media briefing. I'm Anne-Sophie Bradet, the head of the communication department. I'm here with Dr. Josef Aschbacher, the Director General of ESA, Renato Krpoun, the Chair of the ESA Council, and some of our ESA directors as well. Simonetta Killy, the Director of Earth Observation, Carol Mundell, Director of Science, Marco Ferrazzani, Director of Internal Services, Laurent Jaffard, Director of Connectivity and Secure Communications, Tony Tolkien-Nielsen, Director of Space Transportation, and Dietmar Pils, the Director of Tech. We'll start with a preliminary statement from the Vice Chair of the Council and from the DG, and upon the conclusion of these opening remarks, then we will take your questions. I would kindly ask you to indicate on the WebEx interface that you wish to ask a question. Please state your name and your media. I will also, the replay, sorry, will be available on our website and our chats, and this within an hour or two. And now I give the floor to Mr. Vice Chair. To the Chair, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Anne-Sophie. Also from my side, I would like to welcome here to Paris headquarters, also the journalists online. Thank you very much for calling in to this media briefing regarding the Christmas Council, if I could say so. We had different topics. It was an intense 2 days. Certainly, we're in a mood already of stage setting regarding the ministerial 2025. We had in-depth discussions of regarding ESA's perspectives and visions in the currently high competitive space economy environment. There is also some, Josef will also mention some words on the space economy report later on. We have also been briefed on geopolitical changes, also their consequences on the global space domain, and had several discussions on the priorities of member states, on the evolution of the ESA-EU collaboration, and also on the way that Europe has to find its distinct path when it comes to the future in space. I also have the pleasure to announce, and Joseph will here give some more numbers and details later on, that the budget has been approved for 2025, a very strong budget. We also have a new member state, which will start with Slovenia, which will start from early next year. Further, we also had a resolution which was approved concerning a industry member state and ESA Tiger team analysis, which has been done to address root causes regarding the performance and improvement and underlying challenges we see on the agency side. The question always being, how do we become more future-proof, more agile? How do we adapt to the new environment, and also linked to the decisions which were taken in Sevilla? How do we implement these decisions towards the CM 2025? This final set of recommendations has been presented to the Council and has been supported, and the report has been highly supported by the member states. As I've not been here in the last Council, unfortunately, I was sick. I also would like to take the opportunity to announce that ESA has a new industrial ombuds, which will take duty on the 1st of January 2025, which are Matthias Meyerhans and Jean-Marc Nasr. They will take the duty as new ESA industrial ombuds from 1st of January for a 3-year mandate, following their nomination by the ESA Council in October. And with that, I hand over to Josef.
So thank you, Renato. Also from my side, a very warm welcome. Thank you to all the journalists who are here in the room, but also the ones who have joined remotely. It's always a very important interaction that we have, and we are happily updating you of the progress we had. So this council was indeed, I would almost call it a Christmas council. A lot of decisions and actions have been agreed and moved forward. But let me first, this is part of the very good news that we can communicate. I have proposed to the member states that some of my management team, that means my directors, whose contracts are ending in about a year's time frame, that I was proposing an extension and I will explain in detail who they are and for how long. So the first extension that was obtained was for Simonetta Kelly to continue as Director of Earth Observation for another period of 4 years, which brings her towards the end of 2029. And then we had 4 directors, again, whose terms are running out in early 2026. But in order to be sure that we can go safely to the ministerial conference and slightly beyond, I've asked for extension of 4 directors for the period until the end of 2026. It's not exactly a full year, depending on when the contract was scheduled to end. So that means that Tony Tolka-Nielsen as acting director of Space Transportation Services, Rolf Densing as director of operations, Javier Benedicto as director of navigation, and Eric Morel as director for strategy, legal, and external affairs. Those contracts have also been extended until the 31st of December 2026. So this is really good news. I'd like to, first of all, congratulate my team members, that means the directors, for this extension, but also thank my member states for having accepted my proposal, which allows us to really go towards the ministerial preparation uninterrupted and very swiftly. Of course, the 4 last ones I've mentioned, those contracts are running out, and all 4 of them are planning to go into retirement. So that means there will be a new wave of new directors coming, but this process will start next year, and with selections expected in early 26. So now let me recall some of the highlights which we have reported, which I've reported to Council. And I've taken the liberty not only to talk about the last 3 months, that means between the October Council and the December Council, but really have a quick review of what we did this year, 2024, in terms of milestones. And I have to say, the member states have been highly appreciative of what was reported and the milestones that we have achieved this year. And personally, I'm, of course, very proud for ESA, and like also to use the occasion to thank really the ESA team for an incredible work to get there. But ESA teams is always together with the member states, together with industry and many partners, including the European Commission, on several projects where we have achieved these results. So what are these achievements? Of course, all of you have followed very closely the launch of Ariane 6 on the 9th of July. This was, of course, the major milestone, making sure that Europe gets, again, access to space in the heavy launcher segment. But as you also have noticed, we have launched successfully Vega C just a few weeks ago. And with Vega C and with Ariane 6, Europe is back again in space. We have full access to space again for our own purposes. And both missions, both rockets, as you know, have been successful. And this is not to be undervalued and underestimated. It is a big achievement of Team Europe in space, and really brings us back in space with all our possibilities we need. We also had a number of other quite important milestones. So we have launched this year 13 satellites, and many of them very significant large satellites, which are quite important for the various programs. Let me mention them. I'm sure you have all followed them one by one, but in one list, where these 13 satellites, there are 4 satellites of Galileo, which we have launched in 2 different launches. There was Hera, which we have launched about a month and a half ago. Proba, which is composed of 2 satellites. One is blocking the sun, the other one is observing the sun corona, which was launched on the very same day as Sentinel-1C with Vega C. And this is actually the first time that ESA is launching 2 ESA satellites on the very same day. One was launched, as you know, by our friends and colleagues from India with PSLV, which was Proba 3. And the other one was launched from Kourou on Vega C, which was Sentinel-1C. We have also launched earlier, this was in September, Sentinel-2C. We have launched the Arctic Weather Satellite. We have launched EarthCare, which is a joint mission with Japan, which was in April this year. We have launched FISAT, FISAT-2, which is a very small but a very innovative mission applying artificial intelligence in space to detect automatically features and then give very rapid and swift information down to the ground where needed. And we have launched also YPSAT, which was on board of Ariane 6. So you see here we have a very large portfolio of missions, but we have not only launched these satellites, they're all successful, meaning they're all functioning very well. We have just seen the publication of the first images of Sentinel 2C and Sentinel 1C. We have seen recently the first images of, or the first data of Earth Care, both from the Japanese and the European instrument. The Galileo satellites are functioning well, Arctic Weather Service. So it's really quite remarkable what Europe has achieved. If I may, and it is Christmas time, allow me to say that I think we can all be very proud and very proud of these achievements. This really is quite something. We have also opened, just to recall, the lunar facility, the training facility in Cologne, which was earlier this year, which is a unique facility to simulate the situation on of the lunar surface for astronaut and rover training. Talking of astronauts, we have had 2 astronaut missions this year. We had Andreas Mogensen coming back from a 6-month stay on the International Space Station on his Hugin mission, and we had Munin, which is the other related bird of the Nordic saga, the Munin mission, which was conducted by Marcus Wandt from Sweden, which was a mission on Axiom, which was also carried out earlier this year very successfully and very swiftly with our commercial international partners. We have also graduated 5 career astronauts earlier this year. They were the astronauts of the 2022 selection. 2 of them, Sophie Adenor and Raphaël Liégeois, are currently in training for flight allocations in 2026. Of course, dates have yet to be confirmed, but the training is in, they're fully executing their training, and this is fully ongoing. We also have quite a number of other milestones that happened recently. Just to mention some of them, the Harmony Earth Explorer contract was signed recently. The Moonlight program was signed and kicked off IRIS² just a couple of days ago, and many of you have followed it also online or in person together by the European Commission. But as you know, ESA has also signed 2 agreements. One was with the consortium to unlock and to use the subscriptions of the CIMIN 22. And we have, of course, the agreement in place with the European Commission, where they entrust some tasks and funding to us in support or to support the implementation of IRIS². And this, of course, is not to be underestimated. IRIS² was widely reported. I can really say I'm very happy, very proud that this is now happening. The lead is clearly with the European Commission. Commissioner Kubilius was leading and is leading this announcement. And I have to say this is very important for Europe, for the European Union, but also ESA. We can bring in our expertise in support of Europe and obviously industry, both the space industry, but also the operators. Very, very important milestone achieved with this signature. Of course, as we all know, work only starts now, but the milestone on Monday was significant. We also have recently announced the Ignis mission of Axiom 4, which is a commercial mission with Slavoj Uznansky, the astronaut, the ESA astronaut of Polish origin. This was also a highlight to which brings us closer to the commercial flight, which is planned next year. The date is not yet confirmed, but we expect it to be before the summer next year. Also, as you may have seen, I have signed a very important agreement with JAXA, a joint statement of future cooperation, where we have identified 4 domains of cooperation. This is a very important one. It's even called in the title of future big cooperations with Japan, big in the sense of larger scale, also larger funding contributions, of course, all to be confirmed through the various respective mechanisms in Japan and in Europe. But as you recall, we had major cooperations with Japan on Earth Care and Bepi Colombo. Both missions are successfully flying in space, and it was really proposed to follow up with major cooperations. And this agreement, this joint statement, which I signed with the president of JAXA, was a very important milestone in this regard. Also with ISRO, I will sign tomorrow virtually an agreement on activities to support the human and robotic exploration program, again strengthening our cooperation here with India in particular. Let me then recall some of the other elements that have been presented. We had a presentation of what is called the Space Economy Report. This report will be released to the public, so you will get access to it. But let me just quote some of the figures now, but you can, of course, in more detail see the updates. The figures are relating to 2023 in particular, and comparisons between 2023 as compared to the year before. So the global investments of governments, that means public funding in space, has increased in 23 by 11% compared to 22 to become about 110 billion euros total. Out of this, of course, a large portion or the largest growth has occurred in defense, about 18% growth in defense and 7% growth in the civilian part, particularly in the US, but also in China. Europe globally represents about 11% of the total government space budget, which makes about 12 billion euros in the year 2023, while the United States represent about 64% of the global space budget, which of course makes a factor of roughly 5 in between. And this is certainly something that we have discussed also in the context with our member states. How does Europe make sure that the excellence that we have as ESA within the European Space Agency and in Europe, how we can best bring this to work for the needs of our citizens and our economies? Let me say a word on the global private investment. The global private investment has decreased globally by about 32%, which is about 3 billion euros between the years 22 to 23. This is mainly driven by a sharp drop in the US, in the United States, where the drop was about 40%, while in Europe the decrease was 14%, so much lower compared to the global average. The other interesting figure looking at Europe is that the number of deals have gone down, but the size of deals has significantly increased. The average size or the average value per deal, that means acquiring private funding on the market, has increased from 1.4 million in 2014 to 12 million in 2023, which is a factor of 9 higher over a period of 10 years. So really that shows that European industry gets more mature and larger funding contributions are provided through venture capital companies or other contributions. Maybe another interesting figure is that the downstream market is more than 90% commercial, but the European capture of this downstream market is 23%, and that is quite remarkable. I've mentioned before the figures of Europe compared to the United States in terms of public investment, which is 11% globally, but in terms of market capture on the downstream, Europe captures about 23% of the global market, and this is also showing that Europe is very agile, very competent, and is really offering excellence to the world, and therefore making good use of export opportunities. Some other data which have been analyzed were the impact of on the ministerial conference, but there's a lot of work still ongoing. So we will publish that report in the beginning of next year after the March Council. But just to say that there's more work ongoing. Also, we wait, of course, until the end of this year, so they have the full 2024 figures available then to update you with more recent developments. Then one word on strategy. As you know, as I've announced earlier, we have been preparing an ESA strategy 2040. So we have a draft document that is ready. It has been very welcomed by the delegations. They had a few individual comments. That means we are working on finalizing this, and we plan to finalize the ESA strategy 2040. And of course, the strategy 2040 is a starting point for our future planning, especially 2025 ministerial conference, 2028 ministerial conference, and further activities within the ESA frame. So therefore, having this document finalized and ready is a very important milestone. Maybe a word on the budget. It was mentioned before by the chair. The ESA budget 2025 was approved, was adopted. It will be 7.7 billion. This is composed of contributions by ESA member states in the order of roughly 4.8 billion, by the European Union, which we expect to be in the order of 1.7 billion, and some other sources which we expect to be in the order of 1.2 billion. A more detailed breakdown of the 25 budget will be given when I have the annual press conference in early January, where, of course, an overview of 25 in terms of budgets, but also other figures will be provided. Also very important, the scale of contributions has been adjusted and the new revised scale has been adopted because we do expect a new member state to ESA next year. I've announced the last time that Slovenia has gone through all its necessary steps in terms of approval and depositing the documents at the offices of the French government, and therefore will become, or is expected to become, ESA's 23rd member state as of beginning of next year. We had a number of other quite important progresses that were made in launchers in particular. The LED, the so-called Launcher Exploitation Declaration, has been finalized. This was a document that we have negotiated for a while, and this also now provides, of course, a stable framework for the implementation of a number of activities related to Sevilla. One of them being really the European Launcher Challenge, where we also had a resolution adopted at Council just earlier today, which gives now the legal go-ahead, the starting point to prepare the European Launcher Challenge. It means the legal documents but also the various steps. One of them is being an ITT, invitation to tender, where we invite candidates to submit their candidature for being part of the European Launch Challenge. Of course, this goes through a selection process and therefore and then towards the ministerial for subscription of this activity. I will stop here and I'm looking forward to the discussion. But before I do that, also from my side, I'd like to thank you for your trust and very good reporting throughout the year. We had a report today of the communications department. Anne-Sophie here next to me reported on the successful communication activities. And this is your work. You have done this to a large extent with us and also in support of space in Europe. And I really would like to take the opportunity to thank you for this very strong support and very strong work, and much appreciated. We are at your disposal. You get the information you need. This is extremely important for us, and I think also for you. Really thank you, and I attach my good wishes for Christmas as well, but we still have the Q&A before, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Director General. We'll open the floor to questions. First, I just want to mention that 3 additional directors are on the table: of Wolf Densing, Director of Operation, Geraldine Naja, Director of Commercialization, Javier Benedicto, Director of Navigation. I'll take maybe a question from the room first. Yes, please.
Hello,
Can you
Gregor
state
yes,
your name and media for those
sure.
that are online? Thank you very much.
My name is Gregor Waschinski with Handelsblatt. I wanted to come back to the discussions you had during the ESA Council on the perspectives in this highly competitive global environment. Did you also speak and evaluate the new situation in the United States, where your main competitor is, let's say, in a quite special relationship with the incoming president? What are the implications, on the one hand, for a fair competition, but also on the transatlantic cooperation in space between NASA and ESA?
No, thank you. Yes, of course. I mean, we had actually spent more time as usual on discussing a bit the geopolitical context, both the larger picture geopolitically, then the situation in space, and then what does this mean for Europe? And we had a workshop on the first day, that means on Monday this week, where we went a bit more in an informal setting into this discussion. Of course, you're absolutely right, and that the situation might change quite significantly. We do not know what, and I do not want to make any speculation. It's not for me to do that. But certainly it is very clear that Europe wants to be strong in this international context, in this new international context, whatever this will be. We want to be strong, but also we want to be flexible and adapting to any situation as it comes. And therefore, of course, we reflect on what needs to be done in order to be sure that we are preserving the interests of our taxpayers, but also our decision makers in the development of our activities. So yes, absolutely, we have reflected on this, but I think it's too early days to make any prediction, any forecast. We have to see how this all develops. But I can tell you we are ready. We are ready, and we will certainly act decisively and I would say very to make sure that the European space sector is strong and is well placed in the future global context and environment.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Daniel Chrétien from Future Science. Can you tell us about the global impact of inflation to ESA budget?
The global impact of inflation, this is something that is, of course, handled in a routine manner. We have the director of HIF, that means including the finance department here with us. I may hand over to Marco Ferrazzani, but just to say that we have two types of budget from these member states, what we call the mandatory program and the optional program. The mandatory program has a built-in inflation, and this is being built in the adoption of the decisions of 2022. And then we have the optional program, which is automatically adjusted to the actual inflation as it occurs, as it is reported by public institutions. So, and this is about 80% of the budget. So therefore, the inflation is automatically included in our budget requests for the 80% of the budget. It means the optional program, but for the mandatory budget, we have made assumptions in 22. But I'd like to hand over to Marco Ferrazzani, the director of HIF, to further elaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph, and good afternoon to all. As the Director General has well explained, the ESA system is built on an idea of multi-annual programs and therefore multi-annual financial commitments. So we already have in our financial regulations this idea that whenever there's an approval of a program, the corresponding financial envelope and the budgets are already tailored according to a system of price variation, it's called. So only when the price variation and to the amount which is calculated by the statistical offices of our member states in Europe, we have a system of adjustments, which is automatic. So our member states are sure when they do a financial commitment that the real price will be covered over several years and no more than the inflation of the European prices, which are measured by us, accounting the real price index of the cost of manpower in European member states, in our member states. So it's a real reliable system that works for many years, and when proved to be well adapted in periods of low inflation and periods of high inflation. And there is no reason to adapt or change it. So it has proven very well and satisfactory, both to the member states funding and also to the industry for covering the cost. Thank you.
Thank you. A question from Dieter Zurich from Süddeutsche Zeitung. Are there any news regarding the discussions of the target team about the geo-return policy?
So, thank you. Yes, this is one of the recurrent topics, and we love to address it, especially before Christmas. So yes, we did discuss it. It's part of a wider discussion on industrial policy and the transformation that we are undergoing through ESA. Maybe I say one word on what we have done and what the bigger picture is, and then I would like to hand over to Geraldine Nascher, the director in charge of industrial policy, among other things. So what we have done is we had installed, based on a mandate of the ESA member states, a task force, we called it Tiger Team, that is composed of industry, member state representatives, and the ESA executive, that means ESA staff. And this group was actually working extremely intensely and quite successfully in coming up with and addressing some of the issues that have been addressed. And obviously industrial policy is one of them, which relates to geo-return on one side, but also on how we work in the wider context. The geo-return discussion itself, we have also addressed it a bit more specifically as a response also to the report of Draghi, but this we have already discussed also at the previous meeting of Council. But also in general, this Tiger Team has recommended that ESA is simplifying its implementation of the geo-return. The fact that the geo-return is absolutely important for the member states has been confirmed. So there's no question about whether geo-return should or should not be applied. It's a very fundamental rule and very understandably something that was very strongly supported, but in particular the implementation of it. That means simplifying the implementation, having less G returns, and having more envelope type of programs. This is a recommendation that came out of this group and which was endorsed and which was accepted by the member states. Of course, now we need to go into the implementation program by program, directorate by directorate, and this is work that we have to do next year. But I'd like to hand over here really to Geraldine, who has been much in the midst of working on the G return and other industrial policy aspects. We had actually quite a very constructive and positive discussion on this.
Thank you. Yes, geo-return indeed is a fundamental principle of ESA, but it is one of the 4 principles of industrial policy. The other ones being cost efficiency, competitiveness of industry, of course, fair return, European preference, and use of competitive bidding, which we always forget because ESA is also built on competition among companies. So we have already had this year in 24 the first evolution of geo-return towards more flexibility and also towards the so-called fair contribution principle, where in fact the goal is to make sure that geo-return becomes fully compatible with competition and competitiveness. So in fact, the return of the company, the return within the countries, the industrial return is linked to the competitiveness of industry. And this is a very important way forward. That is, we of course continue to guarantee a certain return, but we move so that it is more and more compatible with competitiveness. During 25, we have an agenda for working further on geo-return evolution, simplification, as the DG just said, and less geo-return lines so that we can compute geo-return on a much wider, larger plate, more flexibility, the fair contribution implementation, and also how we handle industrial policy in general on service contracts, because as it was mentioned, we are also at ESA moving more towards service contracts. So this will be the work of 25, and we hope to go to the ministerial in 25 with a large proposal on the evolution of industrial policy as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Peter de Selding from Space Inter Report has a question online. Peter? Can you connect? We don't hear you. So maybe I take 2 questions in the meantime that are related to launchers, and then we'll come back to your question, Peter. So there's 2 questions, one from Thorsten Kriening from Spectros Global. Any updates on A6 first commercial launch on the ramp up for 2025? This question is also in relation to C with the required launch frequency for IRIS², I guess you mentioned, in 5 years, with the 18 Cupid launches in between. And the second question related to launcher is from Robert Wald from Aviation Week. Can you please give a bit more detail on what the Council decision on the European launcher challenge involved and what the timeline now is?
No, thank you both on the launcher questions. I think I hand over straight to Tony Dolka-Nielsen, who is right next to me. Yeah, Tony, I hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Josef. So the first question on Ariane 6, the next flight, we are aiming at February with this flight, and then a ramp up. And how this ramp up fits in with IRIS² is a good question. Now this IRIS² contract has been signed. I've seen that the deployment are foreseen in 29-30, which fits quite well with the overall manifest and ramp up of Ariane 6. We have kept spare capacity in that time frame, so it seems to fit very well. Thank you. On the ELC, yes, The ELC, what was actually decided at council is a formality. It's what we call an enabling resolution, which creates the program formally. And that will enable us to prepare program proposal and program declaration. And I'd like to come back to what Geraldine just said about a fair contribution, because this program will be implemented in this scheme of fair contribution, meaning we will go out with the ITTs probably in February next year after the IBC in January. And we will then get proposals from industry. There will be no constraints on geo return in this ITT. Industry is completely free to form consortia, and they will propose to us. Based on that and the dialogue with our member states, we will prepare the program proposals and program declarations according to the geo return that has been defined by industry upfront. So that's in the mechanisms of this fair return fair contribution principles. So this is the timeline for the ELC. So didn't forget anything now.
Thank you, Tony. Peter? Did you
Hi,
manage to-
can you hear me?
Yes, very well, thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Joseph, I had a couple of questions about the Treasury Tiger team and the ombuds, but you threw me for a loop on the budget. I think I know the answer, and Marco alluded to a little bit about how you spread budgets over 3 years, but the budget for 2025 looks to be a reduction from 2024, particularly in member state contributions. So if you could just shed a little light on that as we wait for the detailed figures in January, that would help. And on the Tiger team, could you explain just what the reason for being of the Treasury Tiger team was? That the same Tiger team you just made reference to earlier? And then on the ombuds, what is their specific role? In other words, what are they assigned to do that hasn't been done but should have been done previously at ESA? Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. On the Treasury, yes, this is exactly the same Tiger team I was referring to. It has an acronym called TTT, Tiger team for on the Treasury. So yes, this is the one. On the budget, detailed figures, Marco will respond. And on the ombuds, the names that have been announced by Renato at the beginning are replacements of other persons. So the function existed before, but these are new nominations that have been approved, and these are the new names, but for functions that existed already. We did have another ombuds that was new, but that was on what is the exact title? On ethics, thank you, on ethics, but that was a new position, but that was already announced at the last October Council. But the two names that were announced today have been replacements of existing ones. Thank you.
Marco, yes.
Thank you to Peter on the point of the annual budget. As the Director General has announced, the approved budget for 25, for which there is full financial authorization, is 7.5 billion euro, which looks slightly less than last year. It's only because on the part of the financial contribution of the member states, there are still some amounts which are not yet authorized through parliamentary system in national countries, particularly from the UK, that is presently with the government under budget review, and we expect to receive additional contribution early next year in 25. That's why we only announce the numbers of what is an approved budget for which there is full authorization to commit. But we do expect some increase in early 25, which will be announced by the Director General as soon as we have it in the first quarter of 25. So we have an indication that if when it's realized, we probably overcome and actually have an annual budget 25 even more than the budget of last year. So we have an expectation on that, but we cannot announce that number now.
Correct. But one announcement that was made at the council today actually was Germany was topping up on some of the existing programs. They announced additional contributions, so in addition to their previous budget agreements for NAVIS per 9.7 million, and for launcher activities related to RN6 and P120C of 14 million. So these were small top-ups of existing programs which were announced today. But as Marco was saying, we do expect some maybe larger adjustments or different adjustments early next year. Thank you.
We have a question from the room. Frédéric Castel, please.
Yes, good afternoon. How much are you concerned about the annual subsidies for the launchers, which are about 340 million per year? And what do you expect in terms of cost reduction in the next years? Thank you.
Thank you. I answer the question on the concern, and then the cost reduction is for Tony. This is a decision that was made at the Space Summit in Sevilla, and I'm very confident. I have no reason to believe that this will not be honored through subscriptions at the ministerial conference. So I'm very confident that this is now all going its normal implementation schedule. We are preparing all the legal documents for this to happen. Of course, you are right. Factually, the funding will be confirmed through the subscriptions at the ministerial next year. But honestly, I really believe that this is something that everyone has very strongly committed to in the resolutions of Sevilla, and feels also committed to subscribe in the ministerial. But Tony, on the reduction, I think you are better placed.
Thank you, Josef. Of course, we are working on cost reduction in the Ariane 6 program. We have actually a program for competitiveness improvement. But there is another answer to this, which is more competition. And that's exactly what this European Launcher Challenge is about. I'm well aware that we will not be able to put Ariane 6 in competition in the coming years. But the ultimate goal of the Launcher Challenge will be that we will be able to procure our institutional launches in open competition, in open intra-European competition. And I think this is already well understood by all the players, that competitiveness will become a driver for survival in the 30th. So I assume everybody has this in mind and work towards this goal. Thank you.
Maybe Frédéric, I just had one more point on, I assume, but I'd like just to recall that this 340 million you mentioned, it says up to 340 million, as you know, and the reduction potential, of course, comes in. But this is part of the Sevilla agreement, and there were 4 individual elements which are all interlinked or connected, and we are really making steady progress on all of them, on the transfer of launch pads, on the transfer of on the launch operator responsibility from Arianespace to Avio for Vega or Vega C, on the launcher challenge as just reported, and the 4th element is the support to Ariane 6 and Vega C. So all these 4 elements are going in parallel. Of course, not at the same speed because they're different decision milestones, but I can assure you that we have made really good progress this year on all 4 dossiers, and therefore I'm also coming back to your question before, confident on the support to Ariane 6 and Vega C.
Thank you. We have 2 questions related to exploration. The first one is from Jeff Foots from Space News. Has NASA provided ESA with any updates on its assessments of Mars simple return plans and how it might affect ESA's contribution? And the second one is from Daniel Chrétien from Futura Sciences. NASA has proposed an evolution of Mars robotic exploration strategy, give priority to smaller and more specific missions. Do you believe this is the future of interplanetary exploration? And what is your strategy after we launch ExoMars?
Thank you for both questions, which are quite related. Formally, we are in very close contact with NASA on a regular basis. Daniel Neuenschwander, who is unfortunately not here available right now because he's in a different meeting, but I can assure you that we are really in very close interaction both on Mars sample return and any other cooperation on the exploration activity. Of course, as you also know very well, NASA is seeing a transition coming up, and therefore also there will be probably new elements coming from that side, but I can assure you that we are very much in the loop of information and discussion. And as I mentioned at the beginning, during my introductory statement, we will certainly be well prepared and well coordinated with NASA on any evolution that might come. But overall, NASA is and remains our strongest international partner, and we are delivering our parts of the commitment. We have just finalized the negotiation of ESM European Service Module Batch B. That means the second batch of the service modules to continue delivering to NASA as we have agreed with them as part of the Artemis project.
Thank you. Question from Paolo Centofenti from ddday.it. Has there been any update on the approval of the Ramses mission to Apophis?
Well, thank you for this. The Ramses mission, this is actually quite an exciting mission, and thank you also for asking. That allows us to give you a short update. So yes, we have been establishing the project in-house. So we have now a project team in place. This all happened after the decision which was made in summer that we have the green light to go ahead. Even in between ministerials, we have been able to organize some of the funding from different sources. By the way, one funding source was money not spent in the implementation of HERA. HERA was not only on time, but even below budget. And some of the resources we could use to start work immediately on Ramses. So we have guaranteed, we have secured enough budget until the next ministerial. Of course, at the ministerial phase 2 of the budget will be asked for. We have established a project team. They are already working very hard in the development and implementation. And I had also very important discussions, not on modern discussions, actually pre-discussions or pre-agreements, one could almost say, with JAXA on their contribution. It is part of this joint statement that I have signed with the president of JAXA. And on their side, some very concrete contributions are being defined right now in order to make sure that this mission, which is an international mission led by ESA, but with the contributions from JAXA, from NASA, and possible other partners, is really going ahead. We have a very tight timeline, as you know. Launch has to be in 28, within a certain relatively short window, in order to make sure that we can encounter Apophis when it comes to our planet in 2029. I don't know whether Rolf, who is here with me, wants to add some more. Rolf, please.
No, there's not much to add. Just to mention that the contract with the Prime was signed in a record time. So the decision for the go-ahead was met in Council in June, and in October, the contract was signed. So everything is working towards the launch date in 2028. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. We have question from Daniel Chrétien. More than a question, he wants a point of view of ESA about Jared Isaacman's future nomination.
Well, thank you for the question, but this is something, of course, I'm not going to comment. I mean, I'm very happy to see the announcement. I did not have yet the pleasure to meet the new NASA administrator. Of course, if confirmed, as you know, there's still a confirmation process that is required, but I do look forward very much so. As I said before, NASA is our strong partner for many aspects, exploration in particular, but also space science, Earth observation, and I really look forward meeting him hopefully very soon.
Dieter Zurich is asking, will a European crew capsule already be topic at the ministerial conference in Bremen? Will a European crew capsule already be a topic at the ministerial in Bremen next year?
I have to disappoint you. This is not in the plans today, but we're making very good progress on the cargo return service. As you know, this is contracted to 2 companies. Phase 1 is ongoing. We are preparing phase 2 for the ministerial, but of course, but this will need future decisions by member states. Of course, if the cargo return vehicle is flying and proving successful, of course, this could be extended towards a future crew capsule or human-rated capsule. But for this, new decisions would need to be made. That we have to make step by step. just as we have seen it also in the US, for example, with Crew Dragon. This was also for many years flying cargo first, consolidating the robustness of the technology, and then eventually turned into a Crew Dragon. Maybe we have a similar path in Europe. I don't want to preempt any decisions, but for now we are on good track for cargo.
Peter de Selding would like to come back on a few points that you mentioned. The plans for a more detailed coordination between ESA's budget set every 3 years and the 7-year EU MFF, and is asking how would this coordination look like?
Well, thank you, Peter. This is a very important point you raised, and we have discussed it also with member states. I've got encouragement from the member states to really talk more closely with the European Commission. As you know, the new commissioner has just taken office on the 1st of December. We had a very few interactions already, very positive so far, but what really is necessary now is on our side, as we are in the midst of planning the next ministerial package, to see how this fits or how this can be well coordinated with the EU MFF, which, as you know, is starting from 2028 onwards. But preparations on the EU side are already starting in a smaller scale, but we do expect that a very, very first, at least according to their schedule, a very first concept or maybe a bit more of the MFF will be available by mid next year. So yes, I've been asked by the member states to make sure that we are closely coordinated, that we are making sure that the ESA investments and the EU investments are well utilized to the most in the most efficient way for taxpayers. And yes, this will become a very intense work over the next year, at least for our part for Siemens 25 to shape it in the right way, but certainly also in interaction to prepare and to support also future investments on the side of the MFF.
Thank you very much, Director General. I think there is no additional questions, maybe in the room. No, I just want to mention in the meantime, if someone still has questions, that the space economy report that you've mentioned has just been shared with you in different loops, so you should have it. It's now available. Look at the team. I guess there is no additional question, neither from the room nor online. So we thank you very much for having participated to this media briefing. Again, we wish you a wonderful Christmas break, and we're looking forward to seeing you next year for a very interesting and dense year that is coming ahead. Thank you very much. Have a very good day. Bye.